Welcome to Analyzing Finance with Nick, where we talk about issues in finance and macroeconomics and how they apply to my viewers' everyday life. This video, I'm going to be answering the solution to the problem I highlighted in the recent video I did titled Moral Degeneracy is Popular Because It's Affordable. And really the thesis of that video is that the cost of vices relative to inflation has declined materially since the 1990s, whereas the cost of virtuous activities such as buying a house, getting a college education, having a family, getting married, etc., has got a lot more expensive adjusted for inflation. And because of that, those two dynamics, you have incentives in society that reward more degenerate behavior and disincentivize virtuous behavior. And so how do we solve that? I think that this has to be solved through economic policy and not just social policy of just banning behavior you don't like. Ever since the days of Caesar Augustus, politicians have been trying to ban socially immoral behavior with very weak results. So instead of just trying to shame people through the legal system to not do something, you have to incentivize some more positive types of behavior and use economic levers to disincentivize unfavorable behavior. And the first part of this, I'm going to talk about the virtue section. What can be done to incentivize more virtuous behavior? There's a number of things. And let's just go with each of some of the virtues that many people believe American society should promote. These aren't all of the virtues, and if there's one I'm missing, feel free to discuss it in the comments. And if you like this type of material, please like, subscribe, and share it. The first one I'm going to talk about is education. So if we have a society that prioritizes completing education, what can be done from a policy perspective to incentivize higher completion rates of education? The first one is that, especially in the university level, is to get rid of student loans, or at least the government guarantee on student loans. I did a whole series of videos, a two-part breakdown of how the student loan market has inflated the cost of college and why getting rid of them or simply just eliminating the government guarantee for banks to lend to students would be a major positive driver to lowering costs. Because the problem now is schools do not compete on providing the most value for dollars spent in tuition. They just assume that borrowers are just going to max out their student loan limit and apply that to pay the tuition. So they compete on just having a fun place to spend 4 years, or academic prestige, or a variety of other elements that would just convince somebody to max out their hypothetical student loan credit card. But if price was signal mechanism again, and schools had to compete on value, then prices would come down. And that is really the solution. I just think the student loan system, the way it is structured, is creating incentives to inflate the cost of education and without increasing the academic value in terms of job placement. Another example would be, for a virtue to promote, would be family formation. We see a lot of commentators complain about the birth rates dropping at record lows across the West and East Asia, and just say, oh, it's a product of moral degeneracy or more education or more agency. Whereas I think it's really an economics problem. The cost of buying a 3-bedroom house or greater in a major job center metropolitan area has gotten unaffordable. And if you look at the cost of a 3-bedroom house relative to wages, there's a very strong correlation. And based on my own independent research, it's about 0.4 to 0.59 R-squared correlation between the cost of a 3-bedroom house in a given city and the birth rate in that given city within the United States. And this also applies across OECD countries, with the only outlier being Israel, which has a relatively high birth rate given its high cost of living. And so if you want to promote bigger families, you need to make it more financially viable. And the reason why I'm so confident that this is the answer is because if you look at surveys that women are surveyed about how many kids they intend to have versus how much they actually have, it's an average of one more. And the main reason why that they've been cited for not having it is just because of cost and difficulties with balancing it with career and all the expenses of having a bigger house and paying for an extra kid to go to college. So the one, I think lowering the cost of college would help, which I already mentioned the solution for that. Two, incentives to make home ownership more affordable by driving down the cost of urban housing. I think this might eventually happen anyway, and I talked about this in a video I did on the housing bust just due to demographics. But if you wanted to accelerate this trend, you would get rid of a lot of NIMBY regulations, particularly in coastal cities, that prevent real estate development. Also, you would have incentivized maybe larger apartments in, say, bigger cities like New York or San Francisco, where it's just not practical to have more low-density single-family homes. Maybe we should have, like they have in places like Europe, where townhomes and apartments that have 3, 4, 5, 6 bedrooms, so you could effectively raise a family while still in an urban environment. The other thing that could solve this too is changing the property tax structure. You can raise property taxes, which increase the cost of carry and therefore discourage speculation in real estate and owning empty properties, and lower income tax and change the balance of taxation to favor earned income over price appreciation of real estate. And by doing that, one, it would make houses more affordable and have lower down payment requirements, even if the mortgage payment is the same due to higher taxes out compensating the decline in price. The fact that the price declines lowers the 20% or down payment you need to buy the house, and therefore makes entering the housing market to begin with more affordable, and allows compounded forced savings through a mortgage and all of that. The other side of the property tax incentive, lowering income taxes as in exchange, would be have more after-tax income available to working families who are often at their peak of their income and need that to support their raising their kids. And if they have more money, they can have bigger families. And if they have more money, the marriages are less likely to be stressed, and therefore divorce is lower, because financial problems are one of the biggest drivers of divorce. So a pro-natal policy would really just be change the tax structures in many jurisdictions away from income tax and more towards property tax. And if you wanted to target specifically family formation, you could have tiered property tax rates based on whether it's a owner-occupied property, whether it's a unoccupied second vacation home, or it's a rental property, or if it's owned by an investor versus an individual. And that can help change the incentives around. Higher interest rates also generally tends to be better for families. Because one, if there are other alternative savings methods than buying rental real estate, like if bond yields are higher than net caps on real estate, then pension funds, other institutional investors are less likely to put a bid in the housing market. And higher interest rates have the same effect of property tax, raising the cost of carry and lowering housing prices. Like this market's kind of an anomaly right now, where we have the combination of high interest rates without real estate prices going down in the residential market. The exception doesn't necessarily disprove the norm when it comes to these kind of things.